In this episode, we talk about the Indian Railways revenue structure since the COVID-19 pandemic. We also discuss Congress MP Sajjan Kumar's life imprisonment ruling in the 1984 anti-Sikh riots. But first, we talk about this government's unprecedented clampdown on Maoists. Hi, I'm Ichha Sharma, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Over the past few years, and especially in the past few months, we have witnessed some of the biggest Maoist encounters in the country. In almost every encounter, dozens or even hundreds of people are killed, with considerably fewer casualties among security personnel compared to previous years. In fact, to underline its commitment to cracking down on Maoists, Home Minister Amit Shah had even set a deadline last September. He declared that the 31st of March 2026 would mark the end of Naxalism in the country.
आज इस बस्तर की भूमि पर कहकर जाता हूं कि 31 मार्च 2026 को इस देश की भूमि पर से हम नक्सलवाद को पूर्ण रूप से समाप्त करने का काम करेंगे और यहां पर विकास होगा.
To understand the kind of effect this clampdown has had on Maoists and how realistic this deadline is, my colleague Shashank Bhargava speaks to the Indian Express's Deeptiman Tiwary in this segment.
Deeptiman, can you tell us just how unusual these recent Maoist encounters have been and how they differ from the ones we've seen before?
Actually, in some ways, it's quite unprecedented because though there have been heightened violence in left-wing extremism areas of the country, but this one is quite one-sided, where it's only the security forces killing Maoists. There are hardly any, barring the last one, IED blast, which killed some 9 or 10 of our personnel, casualties haven't been many. So the encounters that are taking place are basically forces going into the Maoist bastion and claiming that they have killed Maoists. We have seen much severe encounters earlier, but there have been killings on both sides. Okay, so like in 2010 in the Chiltalnar massacre that we all remember, where 76 CRPF soldiers were killed, then security forces launched operations, Maoists were killed. So these kind of things keep happening. But such heavy casualties on the Maoist side and very few casualties on security forces side is quite unprecedented. And the frequency of encounters is also quite unprecedented. And most of these encounters are resulting in kills, which is another factor which is quite new. Such frequency, every frequency leading to Maoist casualties and just the sheer numbers, very high. If we used to hear some 30 Maoists getting killed, it used to be huge news. But now it doesn't make such a big headline. Every other day, some 20, 30 are getting killed. So this is quite unprecedented that way.
Yeah, and in fact, Amit Shah had even put a date to the end of Maoism last year. So can you just place this approach into context and also talk about how previous governments have dealt with this issue?
Okay, so, it started with the Vajpayee government was the first to recognize it, and it set up a committee to study it and to find ways to counter it. But then it lost the polls, and then the UPA government came. And in 2006, we all remember, Manmohan Singh called Maoism the single biggest internal security challenge that the country had ever faced. It was a big statement and a big recognition on part of the government that this was a serious problem and that the government was geared to tackle it. The real work actually started after that, especially when P. Chidambaram became the Home Minister. And there was this Operation Green Hunt, which the government has always denied. But everybody knows that there has been something called an Operation Green Hunt. There was a Salva Judum, which can be debated whether it was good or bad. But there was an aggressive push from the center to tackle the problem of Maoism. And there was a recognition that, that this is a place that, the state has just forgotten. This part of central India, the state has just forgotten. And that is why there is a quasi-state which is operating there. There is an illegitimate state which is operating there in the form of Maoists who are running their own government. And so there was a massive infusion of security forces in these no-go zones, these Maoist strongholds in central India. And there was a policy which was devised, which was called clear, hold and develop. Basically, forces would move into a Maoist stronghold, clear the area of Maoists by obviously engaging them in gunfight, either killing them or driving them out. Then set up a camp there so that these Maoists do not come back and the local population in that area has a sense of security. Okay, obviously win the hearts of the people is part of the plan. And then, you bring the state, you bring the administration.
So basically saying that we'll give you development, we'll give you all the amenities, infrastructure, schools and hospitals, so that you don't have to rely on these rebels.
Especially that the state should be available to those people. No, if state is not available, somebody else will fill that space. It's very natural to happen. And so the idea was to bring the state to the people. And that has happened over a period of time. And when the Narendra Modi government came, and this thing was put in motion when Mr. Chidambaram was there and the UPA was in power. And, security-related expenditure fund was created. There was an integrated action plan that was created. All these things were aimed at basically modernizing police forces of respective states where left-wing extremism existed, setting up forward-based camps of central security forces, giving better training to the local police, providing them better weaponry and communication equipment. So these things were taken care of, and all states were also asked to raise their own crack commando units. And ever since that started happening, there have been results. Now, it's been almost a sort of a decade. We haven't had a very big attack in Jharkhand, which is one of the worst affected states in the country. Almost in other states also, Maoist activity has shrunk considerably. Right now, there are just 35 districts which the government has notified as affected by LWE violence, and they are spread across 9 states. But actually, if you look at it, most of these states, even if we take Odisha and Andhra almost eliminated Maoism. West Bengal has eliminated Maoism. Odisha, barring the Malkangiri region, there also you see, few and far between attacks. It's only the Chhattisgarh which continues to remain a problem, where we continue to see encounters, where we continue to see retaliation Maoists, largely in the Bastar region. That remains the only problem. The rest of the places, it's a flickering lamp, which we do not know how long it will continue to flicker.
And Deeptiman, if we were to just look at the data of, say, last 20 years, can you tell us what it reveals about how the government has countered Maoism? Okay,
so if we look at it purely from the point of view of statistics, we are looking at some 24,000 incidents of violence, Naxal violence, in the country in the past 2 decades, which have led to almost 8,700 deaths. This includes both of security forces, of Naxals, and of general civilians. And the quantum of civilian deaths is rather high, because we understand that around over 2,000 of these deaths are of security forces, maybe 3,000 or slightly more than that of Maoists, and rest all are civilians. So general people have got caught in all of this, either killed in crossfire or killed by Maoists through their IEDs or by branding them as informers. So it has really taken a toll on the internal security situation in the country. And over the years, to tide over it, the government has made certain efforts which have translated into close to 600 fortified police stations being built across the country, especially in the red zone, so that they are immune to attacks from Maoists and can fight them. There has also been a concerted effort on part of the government to arrest Maoists and make them surrender. So in the past 2 decades or so, there have been over 16,000 arrests of Maoists that have taken place. So this is largely how the statistics stack up as far as LWE violence is concerned.
And Deeptiman, you mentioned, the kind of steps the government has taken, from building infrastructure to security personnel going inside the jungles to encounter Maoists. And you mentioned how states like Andhra Pradesh, Bengal and Telangana, their Maoists have been completely eliminated. And even, in states like Odisha and Bihar, for example, the problem now is very limited. So when we look at these different regions, is there any particular strategy that has really worked that stands out?
Yes, one of the main things to keep in mind is Maoism cannot be defeated by New Delhi. It has to be. New Delhi can help. Okay, it can help you with funds. It can help you with more men in terms of central force deployments. but never in no state has the CRPF or BSF or any other force which has been deployed been able to single-handedly win against Maoists.
Is that because they don't know the area well enough?
Yeah, precisely. In any state which has defeated Maoists, be it Andhra and Telangana when they were united, West Bengal, Odisha, Jharkhand for that matter, any state, if they have defeated Maoists, it is because the state police has taken the lead. The state police has formed a crack commando unit. Chhattisgarh was very late to wake up to it, but now Chhattisgarh has something called the Dandakaranya Reserve Guards, who are the DRGs, who are doing a very good job. They've come of age. So unless the state police takes the lead, because the state police is from the place, it has a stake in the law and order of the state. It knows the people, it knows the language, it knows the geography, it knows the terrain. The CRPF guy gets deployed there for 3 years, and from the very first day, he's counting his days as to when he's going to get out of that place. Because it's a very dangerous place. You don't want to lose your life, no matter what you're doing. Everybody has family back home. They want to go home safely. A local police guy does not have anywhere else to go. He knows that, a Dantewada police guy has to stay in Dantewada. He knows he is not going anywhere. Now, if he is prepared, if he is trained, okay, then you won't need the CRPF actually. And it is true for any internal security challenge. The best responder even to a terror attack is a local police station. That is true with any internal security challenge.
And Deeptiman, with the kind of clampdown we are seeing now, how realistic would you say is this deadline that the government has set of 31st March 2026? Because it is a rather bold statement in that sense.
Okay, so I believe that this is a political deadline that you make to show your decisiveness and to give the required push. Okay, but I don't think that this deadline is going to be met because, look, right now the way we are trying to deal with this problem is only through the security angle. What we are doing is we are going and we are killing. We are going and we are killing. Is this a problem where, some foreign elements have entered your country and are disturbing the peace and law and order? No. This is a movement that has risen out of the failure of the state and the failure of the state to look after the tribals of this country. The failure of the state to fill administrative vacuum in central India. Now, unless you've achieved that, you might finish CPI Maoist. You might kill every cadre. But there will always, as long as the state leaves a vacuum, somebody is going to come and fill it. So the idea here is that you have to win the hearts of the people. You have to bring the state to their doorstep. You have to assimilate them in the mainstream. You have to, make them part of India's growth story. Once that happens, automatically the void that had been left will be filled. And nobody will want to join. I just want to put one line here that, in one of the plenums, when CPI Maoist was actually struggling with leadership issues, so this issue was brought up and it was discussed threadbare, and Mupalla Lakshman Rao, alias Ganpati, who is the chief of CPI Maoist, he said that as long as there is socio-economic inequality in the society, I will raise a dalam even in Washington, D.C. So please remember that these guys are coming from a very fundamental level of ideas and ideology. And unless we can actually address that vacuum, there will always be somebody. You may arrest Ganpati, you may kill him. But if we leave that void, somebody will fill it.
And next, we talk about the Indian Railways passenger transport shift. The Indian Railways has undergone a seismic shift in its revenue structure since the COVID-19 pandemic. For the first time, revenue from the AC class travel has overtaken earnings from the non-AC passengers. This shift signals changing travel preferences, economic trends, and perhaps even a shift in the accessibility of railway travel for India's common man. In this segment, the Indian Express's Dheeraj Mishra tells us more about what's driving this transformation, how policy changes and pricing strategies are shaping rail travel, and what this means for the future of Indian railways. Dheeraj, could you start by telling us what were the key differences in the revenue contribution from AC and non-AC in the last 5 years, that is, since the COVID?
So if you look at the data since 2019-20, which is pre-COVID period till date, in 24-25, there has been a very fundamental change in the revenue generation of Indian Railways. Also, there has been the whole Indian Railways is evolving after the pandemic. So first let's talk about the revenues per se. So in terms of revenue, earlier during the 2019-20, which was pre-COVID time, at that point of time, we looked into the data for, over the period of last 5-6 years. And we have found that in 2019-20, at that time, the non-AC classes, which is sleeper class, second class of mail and express or second class ordinary, so these coaches accounted for around 58% of the total revenue of Indian Railways at that time. At that time only in 2019-20, so AC coaches, the AC first tier, second tier, third tier, and chair car as well. So they together accounted for around 41% of the revenue. But see, at that point, not the 41%, it was 36% at that time. Now it has changed. There is a flip-flop between, AC and non-AC, and with minor changes. Now AC passengers, they account for 54% of the total revenues of the Indian Railways, which is estimated to be around 80,000 crore in the current financial year, meaning during 24 to 25. And the share of non-AC passenger in revenue, it has come down from 58% to 38% now. So this is the scenario. It has changed over the period of time. In terms of revenue, it has changed. There was a time in 2019-20, 5-6 years back, when sleeper class was the highest revenue generating class of the Indian Railways. But now it has been taken over by the AC 3 tier.
And so could we identify what were the factors that led to the AC ticket revenue increasing?
So, there are 2-3 factors that we can say, because there is an increase in the demand of premium coaches, because you would have also seen in the last 3, 4, 5 years, Indian Railways have introduced so many premium trains like Vande Bharat, being the highlight of Indian Railways. There are many other trains like Humsafar Express, Tejas Express. There are other, normal express trains as well. In these trains, the number of coaches of AC 3 tier has increased. This is happening because if you look at the data very closely, it seems that passengers of the sleeper class has slightly moved to the AC 3 tier. And as of now, the AC passenger does not constitute very high number of the total passenger of Indian Railways. It is projected to reach to the 6% level if we add from AC first to AC 3 tier and AC chair car. These will constitute the 6%, total passenger of Indian Railways. There is a other side to it as well, because, the maximum passengers who are traveling in the Indian Railways are sleeper class and second class passengers. If we look at the, total number of the passengers, the Indian Railways, this is what, this is a national carrier, and the railways, it is meant to, serve the very common people, the people who are not able to afford the costly mode of the transportation. So it is incumbent upon the Indian Railways as well to provide better services in the sleeper class and second class as well. There is one more thing that I want to point out. Though the share of revenue coming from AC coaches is more, but sleeper and general class are not very far behind. They still constitute around 40% of the total revenues of Indian Railways. So that is also we have to keep in mind that they are also contributing to the revenue.
Right. Also, you spoke of affordability for passengers. So how have ticket fares changed across different classes in the last 5 years?
We compared the data of the average ticket price class-wise, which was in 2019-20 pre-COVID period. The average fare per passenger of a sleeper class, which was 368.28 rupees in 2019-20, it has now increased to 407.48 rupees in 24-25. For AC 3 tier specifically, the fare per passenger has increased by 7.4%, which was 1090 rupees in 2019-20. Now this is average fare, because it will vary from train to train, but average fare of AC 3 tier in 2019-20 was 1090 rupees. Now it has increased to 1171 rupees, which is an increase of 7%. AC first class saw an increase of 25.38%, and similarly AC 2 tier, it saw an increase of 18.22% in the last 5 years. So, like I said, there has been increase from 6 to 25% in terms of passenger, in terms of the, the ticket prices.
Right, and as you previously mentioned, that AC 3-tier class is the most sought after class. So can you tell us how much revenue it generates, and also why is it the most preferred AC class?
It's a very important trend that we are seeing right now in the Indian Railways, especially in terms of AC 3 tier. The total number of passengers traveling in AC 3 tier is just 26 crore, which is 3.5% of the total, 727 crore passengers that are, estimated to be traveling in the Indian Railways right now. But they generate, and revenue of 30,000 crore rupees, which is around 38% of the total revenues of the Indian Railways. Like earlier mentioned, there was a time when sleeper class was the highest generating class of the railways. Now it is AC 3 tier. There is a fraction of the passenger who were earlier used to travel in sleeper classes. They have been able to increase their salary in the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And now they are able to afford a ticket of a AC 3 tier. So because there is an increase in some kind of income, there is an increasing demand. Second reason has been, like I said, that there has been out of all the AC coaches, out of all AC classes, including AC first, AC second tier, AC chair car, AC 3 tier saw the least increase in the fare price since 2019-22 till date. So this is also another reason that why it is most preferred, and also the railways is also looking at it, and they haven't increased the fare of this class. I mean, it hasn't been increased very significantly.
Also, Dheeraj, when speaking about, a rise in AC travel, what are the factors that are driving this higher demand? Also, is it purely income driven, or there are behavioral shifts, post-COVID?
I mean, there is income. There is another reason. I mean, they provide, in the premium classes, there are good facilities available in these AC 3 tier, comparatively good facilities than sleeper class. So, these are the reasons that because of income, good facilities, and also these trains are being run, when Indian Railways decide to run a train on a particular line, what we call, they have to take this commercial consideration into account that, if we will run the train on this route, this section of the society is going to benefit it from. So like Vande Bharat trains, which is among the top focus of Indian Railways, the Vande Bharat trains are being run on those stretches where there is more movement of the business class people, movement of the people, like they want to take a train in the morning, reach somewhere by afternoon, complete their work, do something, and want to get back from that place to their respective cities by midnight, maybe by late night or something. So that is how they plan to run these trains.
And lastly, Dheeraj, what long-term impact could these changes have on Indian Railways passenger transport strategy? Like, will they invest more in non-AC classes infrastructure, or will we see additional AC class coaches?
Like the data shows that the Indian Railways has upgraded facility for the premium classes, which is evident from the data. But we cannot forget that the maximum number of passengers, the whole AC classes put together, account for just around 6% of the total passengers of Indian Railways. So it means, even if we do not consider the suburban travel, because in the suburban travel, it's like a metro system. So even if we do not consider that suburban travel, the maximum number of passengers are traveling in the sleeper and general coaches. So it's a challenge for the Indian Railways as well to provide an affordable, good system to the maximum number of the people. Because see, it is very clear for the data as well that these classes, sleeper and general classes, they also contribute to the total fare revenues of the Indian Railways. It is not the case that they are traveling free of cost or they are not sharing to the total revenue to the railways. Like I said in the very beginning, that the second class of mail and express train, they are the second highest contributor to the total fare revenues of the Indian Railways. But the responsibility is to provide safer, cheaper, and good transportation system to the larger people. And railways, still it is the safest, or it is a very easiest, affordable mode of transportation for a very large number of people.
And in the end, we talk about former Congress MP Sajjan Kumar sentenced to life imprisonment for the 1984 anti-Sikh riots. 4 decades after the tragic 1984 anti-Sikh riots, justice continues to unfold. A Delhi court sentenced former Congress MP Sajjan Kumar to life imprisonment for his role in the 1984 anti-Sikh riots. The Indian Express's Nirbhay Thakur covers the significance of this ruling and examines how the legal system has handled riot-related cases. The ruling marks the second life sentence for Kumar, who was already convicted in another case related to the killings during the riots that followed the assassination of then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. The case pertains to the murder of two Sikh men, Jaswant Singh and his son Tarundeep Singh, in Delhi's Saraswati Vihar in November 1984. According to the Special Investigation Team, Kumar led the mob that set their house on fire, looted their belongings and killed them in broad daylight. For those who may not already know, the riots erupted across Delhi and other parts of India following Gandhi's assassination by her Sikh bodyguards in retaliation for the military operation at the Golden Temple in Amritsar earlier that year. Thousands of Sikhs were killed in the violence that followed, with widespread allegations that Congress leaders, including Sajjan Kumar, incited the mobs. Survivors have spent decades fighting for accountability, with cases being reopened years later due to persistent public pressure and intervention by the courts. Kumar is already serving a life sentence in Tihar jail for his role in the killing of 5 Sikhs in Rajnagar Palam colony and the burning of a Gurudwara. Nirbhay highlights that the latest conviction comes after the prosecution argued for the death penalty, citing the brutality of the attack and the lasting trauma inflicted on the victims' families. The court, however, imposed life imprisonment considering Kumar's advanced age of 80 years and his medical conditions including hypertension and Parkinson's disease. The ruling also acknowledged that despite these factors, the gravity of the crime demanded severe punishment. Nirbhay states that latest convictions highlight the challenges of prosecuting cases related to mass violence decades after the events took place. Witnesses, survivors, and families of victims have long alleged political interference, delayed investigations, and intimidation. Many cases linked to the 1984 riots were initially dismissed or never reached trial. It was only after sustained pressure from civil rights groups, victims' families, and subsequent government-appointed investigation teams that some high-profile cases were reopened. Despite the verdict, the fight for justice is far from over. Kumar still faces multiple pending cases related to the riots. Nirbhay highlights that in 2023, Kumar was acquitted in a case concerning the murder of 7 Sikhs in Sultanpuri, and his appeal against his 2018 conviction is pending before the Supreme Court. Additionally, legal experts argue that justice delayed for so many years is not true justice, as many of the key perpetrators remain unpunished. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank, Bhargava and me, Ichha Sharma. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.